Welcome to the Money Inflow podcast, where avocado toast and stocks meet. Did you know that women and women of color don't talk that much about money? And did you also know that the health and wellness community is a $600 billion business? And did you also know that women aren't in the forefront when it comes to decision making with our health and wealth? We're here to change that. This is the first podcast that focuses on wellness and money. This podcast is targeted for women and women of color, specifically in their 20s and 30s. And without further ado, your host, Eugenie George. All right, listen up. Welcome to the Money and Flow podcast, the first podcast where we talk about your vinyasa and your cash flow. This is a financial wellness podcast. Let me tell you, last week and the week before last, I was so moved and so excited about what's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years when it comes to wellness and women of color. And whoa, not only was I super excited, but this is the first time within the podcast or our podcast that we are having a big magic moment. We had Kayla on the podcast for the last two ones, and I'll make sure I put both of those in the show notes. But what's interesting is that she is in the process of having a business coach, and her business coach is Awilda. Awilda is a former lawyer turned into a yogi, and she has a podcast called When Life. I kid you not, everything that she said was very parallel to my life, and I know it's parallel to a lot of other folks' life. So in this podcast, we're going to break some unlimiting beliefs. And there were so many times during that podcast, during the recording, where I almost cried. And the reason why I cried was because at the end of the day, your gut is telling you what you need to do. And for some reason, we still just don't listen to it. So I'm going to make sure I get off this and do what I need to do. I need to hire a publicist. And I've been thinking about this for such a long period of time. And it's like, now it's time to do something. So here's Awilda, coach, business coach of Kayla. She's out here winning life. Let's get it. Hey, Awilda, I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you and get a chance to speak to your audience today.
Yeah, I have been doing a little bit of stalking, wellness stalking. And, I have been very impressed with your podcast and then also with your retreats. And then just being a person that is, I would say you have the best of both worlds. You are very assertive, but then also very soft. And I enjoy the fact that you can embody both of those. So yeah, I'm very happy that you're here.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's probably the nicest way anyone has described my quote unquote assertiveness in a ever. So I will take that. I will take that.
So can you walk with the audience your health story and like how did you get into the process of
Yeah.
Reiki?
Yeah, and I'll try to, I'll try to be succinct. But essentially, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I went to law school. I graduated in 2009. I went straight after college. And this is, the thing I thought I was going to do, a lawyer. And the first kind of fell out over time, and the last one stayed. And when I got to law school, I enjoy being a student. So I really liked everything that I learned. I did feel that there was a lot of value there. But when I graduated, it happened that I graduated in 2009, which was the Great Recession, as we now call it.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, a lot of the big law firms and organizations were not only not hiring, but they were deferring people.
Mm-hmm.
So I happened to graduate at a really precarious time where things, that had been unheard of were happening in the legal industry. But at that point, I kind of had already started to have this sort of small thought in the back of my mind that was like, maybe you don't want to do this, right? But when you're the first person in your family to graduate from college, go to graduate school, and potentially have like one of those big four jobs, lawyer, doctor, engineer, professor, it's not easy to just say, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. So I kind of pushed myself to just go forward, right? I graduated, might as well just like find a job and figure it out. I was about 26 years old and I was working at the Hudson County Family Court in Jersey City
Mm-hmm.
for a very, best way of putting it, a very particular kind of judge. He was very known for being kind of intense and requiring a lot of his clerks and all that. Long story short, I did that. It was intense, to say the least, because I was working with DIFUS cases, kids being taken from their parents like within 24 hours, and parents losing their parental rights. All the kids look like me. Judge did not look like me. It was, I had myself gone through family court, so it was a lot, but it was important work. At the end of that clerkship, August of 2010, I ended up having a mild cardiac event.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had like a mild arrhythmia and had to be rushed to the hospital from the courthouse. I was overnight in the cardiac wing of Jersey City Medical Center, where I was like one of the youngest people in the hospital at that night. That night, I had to sleep with a bunch of things on my chest. And let's just say it was a long night of self reflection where I was like, okay, you're 26, you're pretty healthy. I mean, aside from the pretty much, run of the mill college drugs, like you're not someone that should be having a heart issue, right? What's going on? And all that I kept coming back to was just not wanting to be a lawyer and the fact that I was feeling very pressured by myself, really, and by like this external idea of what I'm supposed to be doing and everything that I've invested my time in, that I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
When I left the hospital, I basically declared that I wasn't going to be a lawyer and had to deal with, and still, still to this day, 10 years later, still deal with people being like, are you sure you don't want to be a lawyer? Like, you spend all that money. And it's like, I'm good. So that heart event is what triggered me getting more into the spirituality part, which was what led me into the wellness part. Because for me, it's all one thing. Like the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the physical, it's all connected. And in yoga, there's an idea that we have these different energetic bodies called the koshas. And there's our physical body, the food body, the emotional body, the mind body, the intuitive body, and the spirit body. And so without really realizing, I was coming back into connection with those parts of myself, having grown up in a spiritualist Puerto Rican household where Santeria was practiced and there was a real connection with our African diaspora and where I came from, and all of that. Like it wasn't that much of a leap, and I think that the way that my subconscious got me to kind of just do it was saying, listen, you're getting older, you want to protect your cultural heritage, right? So for me, it was about coming back to it as a point of cultural heritage, but also as a point of like, at that time my grandma was, diagnosed with Alzheimer's and passing, kind of going through that transition, and she had been the holder of all those traditions, right? So for me, it was like, okay, I'm not, clearly my body's telling me something, and clearly I'm missing that spiritual connection I had that also connects to my roots. Let me go back to that. So through the process of doing that, I was able to really reconnect with that idea of sort of my own personal divinity. And that allowed me to open myself to a lot more opportunities, which, long story short, and, brought me to Atlanta from from the New York, New Jersey area. And also led me to have a very intense out of body experience that was shared with my partner in 2012 that further pushed me into stepping into my spiritual abilities. Because ever since I was very little, I had a lot of gifts, sort of paranormal in nature. And I just thought that was like Puerto Ricans. I was like, oh, Puerto Ricans, they're so colorful. They can talk to dead people and, like they heal, they put their hands on people and they like heal you. Oh, Puerto Ricans, that's so cute. But I didn't actually realize it was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so after that body experience, it was like the volume had been turned all the way up on
Right.
those abilities. And I was in a big transition, right? I had left everything I knew in the tri-state to come, in pursuit of love. And luckily, we're still together and getting married, but that could have not gone as well. But in the pursuit of love, to come to a new city and a new state, and I didn't know anyone. And that was, frankly, I was after like the honeymoon period. I was kind of depressed. So around like the end of 2012, because the out of body experience happened in the summer, but I probably like the end of 2012, I was starting to feel like down, like I was like, I don't have my people. I don't have my tribe. Like I don't have my community, like everyone's far away. At that time, I was still like figuring out what I wanted to do professionally, like it was just so many things that I was like, okay, let me try to work out. And in my mind, I thought I was still like the 19-year-old who played multiple varsity sports and could just hop on the treadmill and run 6 miles. Very quickly, I realized, no, you're not that person anymore, sweetheart. Like,
Right.
you need to find another angle. And then beyond that, you need to like confront what's happening in your mind.
Mm.
Like, you need to confront it. You need to like get close with it and like face it. And that's when the thought had crossed my mind, like maybe I should try yoga. And I had went to boarding school when I was young. I was an alumni of a program called Prep for Prep in New York that takes academically gifted kids and helps them get into private school. So through that, I had ended up in boarding school in high school, and I had been exposed to yoga there, but I literally thought it was like something for wealthy white people. I was like, what type of laziness? Like we're just rolling on the ground, stretching. I don't like this. This is not real. This is not like athletic. Like this is
Right.
some BS. But at this point, fast forward 11 years later or 12 years later, I'm 27, 28. I'm feeling lonely. I'm in a new city. Yeah, I can't work out the way I used to. I was like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen is that I don't like it. I went and I immediately like it was like I was just looking for a place where I could just kind of let it all out,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word. And like within my first experience, I had what they refer to as like a yogic release, which is when you go to the mat and you start moving your body, whatever the teacher's saying hits a chord, in you, and suddenly like you feel like you want to cry. And it's
Oh
like,
my, yeah. No,
and you
I've had
and
that
you're
way
not
too
like
many times.
planning it.
Yeah, yeah. You just
You're not
like,
like planning it. You show up, you got whatever on your mind, and teacher's like, you're enough. And you're like, well, I am, you know? And it was just like, from that moment, I was like, okay, there's something to this yoga thing, and I want to investigate it for myself, like for me, right? And so I dove into it, looking for the right studio and all that kind of thing. And I found my home studio and I fell in love with it, and I decided I wanted to do the program.
you mean yoga teacher training?
Yeah, yoga teacher
Okay.
training. And within like a week or something like that, this was 2015. Within like a week of that, I had applied to and gotten a coaching scholarship for a program.
Mm,
And ended up doing my coaching certification and my yoga teacher certification at the same time. concurrently.
Wow.
And then once that was complete, I was like, okay, like this is like my trinity, for lack of a better analogy. But it was like, okay, spirit is like body, mind, and spirit, and each one can attack all three, or you can use one for one and one for another. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. It seems like, particularly when I mean, that's why I named the show Money and Flow, because people always want to separate the quote unquote logical side of you. And then there's also the spiritual side, and people want to separate it, but it's all encompassing. And so if you can find a way to have coaching and yoga training at the same time, I mean, I can imagine that would be very transformative. But like if you can actually merge all of the bodies, like you mentioned before, of
Mm-hmm.
course that's going to be more impactful. Of course you're going to hit the ground running. Like, of course you're going to get this transformation. And so I think with the audience, because I have a lot of folks on the podcast or that listen, they're pretty on the some of them are on the woo side, but I have a lot of people that are on the money side. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's kind of the thing. But I think it's really important for folks to understand how pretty much your near death experience transformed your life. Because there's been so many
Yeah.
studies based off of that. Like my favorite, I used to watch Univision, like an
Mm-hmm.
abnormal amount, and that leading anchor. I don't think he is the leading anchor anymore, but the leading anchor had a near death experience, and that fundamentally changed his life. And so those moments are make or break, and it's like the universe telling you to wake up. So you have to
Yeah,
make the
it
decision.
really is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm 100% for that. And I'm very grateful that you shared your story, just because it's a lot, especially, when we talk about history, where you came from, your ethnicity, your
Yeah, I mean,
background.
and like to give you guys perspective, like I grew up in the projects and in Washington Heights because my parents were separated. So it
Okay.
was like, I didn't come from money. I didn't have money like that growing up. Like my mom worked on Madison Avenue, but we didn't have Madison Avenue money. And
Right.
my dad like was up until his 40s just kind of like, he was involved in some things and did some like he was like in social work. But then, I will say that even if there's people listening that are older, don't let that discourage you. Because like my
Mhm.
dad changed his career when he was 43 years old to IT, teaching himself IT as he was driving a yellow cab, you know?
Mhm.
So, it's all about where your mindset is, where your intention is. And, for those of you who are also listening who are like, okay, the spirituality part, I don't really know about, like, maybe you're religious or maybe you're atheist. Think about it more in terms of alignment, right? It was like where your energy goes, your intention flows, and that's what you manifest. So if you're focusing on like positivity and putting yourself in a position to receive opportunities and to, share your gifts with the world, then your intentions are going to be supporting that. And then what's going to come to you is going to be in direct response to what you're doing.
Right. And it'll feel right. It will.
Exactly. Oh, it'll feel great.
Well, that's the crazy thing, because I mean, this is me going off kind of on a tangent, but not really. But today, I just had a job interview, and the interview was working for a financial firm, and so um, specifically for the Money and Flow and for my website, I'm very intentional with who I want to help out with their finances. Like I'm very
Mm-hmm.
honest about like I want to help out millennial women and women of color. And that's pretty much it. Like I'm very open about that. And so I talked to this guy. He was very like, I don't know if you saw that movie ABC, Always Be Closing, like very sales driven. Like you have to do this, this, this. And he didn't even listen to the fact of my like mission. He like pretty much brushed away. And I felt this feeling in my gut, like, if he doesn't believe in what you have to do or what you believe in, like, why are you still trying to, why do you still try to keep in this mode or keep open this like door that's not even your door? If that's not supposed to,
Yeah.
like being the
Yeah, if it's for
hardcore,
you, it'll be for you, you know?
right?
Like if it doesn't
Yeah,
feel right, don't do it.
it's crazy. But I mean, going
Well, I
back
mean,
into that,
there's so much tied into that for, and
right?
I mean, I can speak for women of color who are millennials, as I am one, or at least from my personal experience. But like, there's a lot tied into that in terms of like, supporting yourself, whatever your family background may be, whatever maybe riding on that or whatever expectations you may have put on yourself, whatever your student loan debt may be, right? And like there
Hmm.
was a time when I was early in my entrepreneurial pursuits where I would just like say yes to anything, right? And I was just like,
Hmm.
if someone called me, if someone sent me a text right now in the middle of this interview and was like, can you do a reading in 30 minutes? I would say yes. But I realized, or if it was a program that I wanted to run at a school and there wasn't enough students, but I like really wanted to do it, I would like do it even though I was losing money. And it got to a
Hmm.
point where it had to be like, okay, like I get that, there's a passion at what cost, right? And so
Right,
that's where the pragmatic part comes in, where it's
right.
like, okay, we have to do things that are going to advance us
Hmm.
towards the success we truly desire, right? Because I've created a concept called success math, and it's predicated on a visual sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? Quantitative um, expression of a qualitative experience, right? And on one part of the equation, there's just S, right? Success as you define it from the inside out. The problem is a lot of people today are pursuing success as someone else has defined it for them, like Awilda prior to the heart situation, right? It was like, oh, Cosby show, lawyer, doctor, military, boom, do it. That's what you should do, right? Then I was like, okay, heart attack or heart situation. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Now taking the time to define success for myself. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Do I want to work for someone else? No, I don't actually. I want to work for myself. Okay, well, what are you willing to do to make it happen? Right. So when it comes to like the money and the flow part, at least in my personal business, right, to bring it back to the actual point of your podcast, I always leverage whether it's an investment or a risk that's going to generate money. What what are the different leverage points, right? So if it's like an investment, okay, like for example, I hired a PR person, and it's not cheap, right? But what are the points of leverage? Okay, gained exposure, potential high profile guests for my show, someone whose job is dedicated to getting me speaking opportunities. There's a lot of leverage points there, so it's worth the investment, right?
Right,
If even one thing that she pings hits and it leads to a client, then I've already made back my investment in what I paid for 3 months,
right.
right? So that's the way I think about it. Like with the yoga teacher trainings, like right now I'm doing my 500-hour yoga teacher training.
Mm.
And my people might be like, wow, you did a 200, you did a 95, and you did a 30. Like, why are you doing a 500? And it's because for me, I know there's still things about the science of yoga that I don't know that are important, that will bring value to my students, to myself, right? It's like, and ridiculous amount of money, but it's still not as expensive as some other programs. And what am I going to get out of it? Deeper understanding of the physical, emotional, energetic, like all these bodies, more anatomical knowledge, more physiological knowledge. That's huge leverage points, right? So it's worth it. When it
Right.
comes to opportunities, right? Like, let's say I'll use a current example. So I am a vendor for City of Decatur schools, which allows me to provide extracurricular yoga club in the schools upon the principal's approval that the parents pay for a 10-week period.
Mm.
When I was first starting working, I was like, oh my God, I have to do X number of programs. no matter what, because I need X a number of dollars, even if the cost benefit wasn't there, right? Just because bottom line dollars needed. This year, I had two programs. One didn't make enough students. There were students registered, but it wasn't the minimum number required for the cost benefit to be positive. I canceled the program. Awilda 3 years ago would not have canceled the program. She would have just done it, eaten the loss, and been unhappy for the next 3 months.
It's like you're preaching
Right?
to
Just
the
because,
choir. Yeah.
yeah, just like because of a feeling of obligation. Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, you say you want this, then you have to
Mhm.
do it that way. And it's like, no, you say you want this, be intentional about what you're doing. And believe it or not, when I canceled that program, the other program blew up and ended up registering to selling out capacity. And I
Mm.
made the money I would have made in two programs in only one program,
Okay.
right? Money and flow.
Right. Yes,
Go with
exactly.
the flow, and here comes the money. Same situation. I gave up that time. Now I was able to finish my book as of yesterday. All
Congratulations.
24,652 words finished, right? I
Yes.
was able to finish and pass the Georgia real estate licensing exam so I can step into the business role with my partner who runs a real estate investment business. And, no harm, no foul.
Right. And it's a trip. I think the part of the money or the part of the flow part, it's it's like clearly your body and your energy is telling you something to do something, and then most folks, they hear it, they listen to it, and then they don't do anything else with it. And so I really do appreciate that you said you hired a PR person, because one, I'm literally going through that phase right now where I'm like, should I hire a PR person? Like I was telling Kayla that on the last podcast, maybe I should hire someone that's in PR, because, at a certain point, it's like you put all this investment in what you want to do next. And it's funny too, because I've always been saying with particularly with the money and flow part, I was like, I probably should get yoga teacher training. Because in my mind, in an ideal world, there would be something where there's an actual workshop with yoga and budgeting, which people are like, that's crazy. I'm like, but I don't
No,
think
that makes
it's crazy.
total sense to me because
Okay.
you get them grounded and then like a good mental space. You get them to drop their guard
Right.
because finances are such a tense and sensitive subject for so many people, that I could totally see the benefit for there being like a yoga part and then a finance part after, because it's like the lollipop and the medicine. It's like lollipop, medicine,
Yeah, I
and
love
it's
it.
good for you.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so let's go back, because I'm loving this. Is it a risk? Is it an investment? See, this is also why you're powerful, because I mean, we mentioned the assertiveness and the softness. You have to have both, and I think that that's very important for having a successful business. So, Kayla was talking about you. She raved about you. She said that I mean, going through your business coaching program, and I think she's still in it, correct? Is she still kind of
Yes,
going?
yes, yes. We're still working together. Yeah.
Okay. She said one of the biggest changes about her is to recognize that being in the wellness space is profitable. So
Yes,
could you
yes.
talk to the audience about that? Like
Oh,
being
yeah. I mean, like, okay, let me preface it by saying two things that are really important, and I just want to open everyone's eyes out the gate. Okay. The wellness industry isn't all like kumbaya, number one. Okay. So, despite what people may put on their Instagram or like what you may experience, like at a yoga class or in a like specific context, it can be very cutthroat, and it's not all like hugs and love and rainbows, like when you get to the business part of it. And I think part of that is because a lot of people who are in business and wellness, they spend too much time taking a lot of L's at the beginning, feeling like, oh, well, I should be giving this away. And if I really want to change the world, like I should be like just giving, giving, giving. Like that's really like namaste or whatever. And it's like, okay, do you have a trust fund? Because how are you going to eat?
Right.
And that's nothing against anyone with a trust fund, like God bless you. But if you don't have a trust fund and you want to dedicate your life to wellness, then you got to think about it from a business perspective, and you have to be willing to say, I'm either willing to do that or I'm not. So for example, there may be someone who has a job who just wants to teach yoga, like they just want to teach yoga. They're not trying to make money off of teaching yoga. Cool, no problem. Have at it. But if you want to go into the wellness space and you want to become a um and you want to become a yoga teacher and you want that to be your profession, then you
Mhm.
have to really think about how you monetize that. And the model for that right now is kind of broken. Um
Can you describe
so
that? So, like, is in my mind, I'm picturing the model is somebody posts on Instagram, someone's like, hey, welcome to my yoga class. They come in, that's how they make funds. And those are like that's like the old model.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the model is like you go to a yoga teacher's training, you like hustle yourself out, like damn near prostitute yourself out for free to whatever studio will hire you for whatever they'll pay you, and you'd like do that for a while, for like 2 years until you either get burnt out or you find some other way to leave teaching at a studio, or you like grow your following so much that you're making decent money at that studio, or you stop teaching yoga altogether, or you go online and you become like a yoga persona or personality, where you're like your whole page is yoga, everything you talk about is yoga, you might even have a damn YouTube channel about yoga. And for some people that's really really profitable, but they are constantly dedicating themselves to the creation of content, to making sure they're keeping up with what their audience is requiring. And so that's more like the modern model, where everyone wants to be a yoga celebrity online, like everybody wants to be a yoga celebrity.
So
And
that's like yoga
you know
girl, like
I'm Yeah, I mean, and it's really great in many ways, because, like, for example,
mhm.
Kayla, I wouldn't call Kayla a yoga celebrity, but I would say that, I mean, she kind of is, but I would say that, like, she's very well known for not just yoga. Like, she does a good job of like, making sure that she is in alignment with what her brand is, because her brand isn't just yoga, right? And if you go to Kayla's page, you'll see it isn't just yoga, right? But for a lot of these people who are, because she's also mental health and like the the Black queer experience, and just being a platform for that, and that's what she shows on her social media. If you go to like I'm trying to think of someone who's a good example of this, like I'm trying to think of someone that's only like Yoga with Adrian, for example. She's someone who's like only yoga all the time, and her page is yoga. She has a YouTube channel. She does the challenges, and she's profitable. You know, and if that's your passion within the wellness, if it's mental health, finance, whatever, and you want to brand yourself as only that, then you can do that, and people have been successful with that. With Kayla, and with people like Kayla, who I would consider not, I mean, passionate, I think, is a misnomer, because it would suggest that your passions are mutually exclusive. um Whereas I think with people like Kayla, you're passionate about different things, but they all sort of intertwine, like the
Right.
spirituality, the coaching, and the yoga. For me, there's a thread that runs through all of them, even though someone from afar may be like, how does that go together, right?
Mhm.
um and so with someone like Kayla, it's about creating an alignment. right? And knowing what it is that your brand is, and knowing how it is that you want to present your brand to make yourself profitable, right? And for someone like Kayla who has following, it was took just a simple moment of reminding, like, why, think about why people like you. I mean, like, it's
Mhm.
as simple as that. Like, why people click that. I mean, to use Instagram as a, we'll use it as an example, but like, think about why people click that follow button.
Right.
What is it that they saw that resonated with them, that was really genuine about you, that made them click, right? And for example, with someone like Kayla, whose page isn't only yoga, it's, her personal journey, the way she talks about mental health, the way she is
Mhm.
very personable on there. She shares her, some aspect of herself on there, and people feel they can relate to her, and it builds trust, and it builds know, and it builds like. And then when she has things, people are like, oh, I trust her, I like her, I know her, I want to go to her stuff, right?
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
realizing that that know, like, and trust equals dollars.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was telling her, I was like, I have so many ideas for you because I was like, you honestly, when you look at her comments, or when you look at what she's doing, there are so many people that are very open with her as a brand, as like her.
Yeah.
I think there was one Instagram post where she was talking about, when she was suicidal and different things like that. And so
Yeah.
it is, I think it's necessary, and I also think it is a way to be profitable. Like
Yeah.
I was like, how come you're not doing corporate wellness stuff? Um, and she's like, I never even thought about that. It's like, you have Instagram is, first of all, Instagram is hard as it is to like get people interested in what you have to do, but
Hmm.
to also be um, a therapist doing all of this and being a yoga practitioner at that all,
And a
it all
woman of
makes sense.
color.
Yes, yeah, it all makes
Hmm.
sense. Yeah, I
And
love it.
I think a lot of it also has to do, like, for people that are listening that may be like not in the wellness field, but are, like, hey, I still matter, my inflow. Um, it's just about, like I said, about being in alignment, like being clear about what your brand is. And then, I've said this a million times, but I'll always say it, like, even if you don't think of yourself as a brand, you are. Like, you are a brand. Like, we live in an era where you are a brand, even if you work for somebody else. Because how
Mm-hmm.
else do you explain, the people who get fired for saying racist things because it went viral? Because now
Mm-hmm.
their brand is tarnished. No one
Right.
wants to associate with their brand, right? The dollar signs disappear. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's not about looking at yourself as a brand. And like, why I love Kayla is because even though she has that knowledge, there's nothing salesy or inauthentic about what she's doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is why people love her. And that's the thing. It's like, you can be a brand, you can be conscious of the fact that you're a brand, but doesn't mean you have to be like crazy calculated. Like, yeah, you need to decide how much of yourself you want to share with the world. And
Mm-hmm.
that's reasonable. Like, for example, if you look at my page, I don't post every day. Like, I may put up a story every day, but I don't post a picture every day. Like, I've never posted a picture on my feed of my stepdaughter. Maybe once, you know, just
Mm-hmm.
because those are things that are, kind of private to me. And it's not that I don't want to share them with the audience, but it's like, for me, I don't think that's where the extra value is. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, so, and I feel that's fine. So it's okay for you to have sort of like a boundary, where you're maybe monetizing your brand through sharing yourself, but without having to share everything of yourself.
Right. They call it ORM, which is online representation management. It's like, at the end of the day, someone's representing you. So you want to be the person that represents yourself instead of what those like certain Facebook photos of you, like the tags of you are. Um, I have been talking about this a lot, particularly with like the financial community, because I'm actually applying for this to give this talk because I also wrote a book, so we definitely will have to exchange books. But
Yay!
one of the things
Yes.
that frustrated me was like, basically, there's so many, like I can tell at this point, I can tell people every a woman of color, I can basically find out their generational trauma based off of
Yeah.
like certain laws. I can be like, oh, this law, this law, this law, and this is why you have an issue with commitment, or like this is why you have an issue with abandonment. It makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
I'm able to say that, but most people, especially when you're thinking about like the people that are in the, I don't even want to call it the quant field, but people that are more on the doctor, lawyer route,
Mhm.
they're not, they either they don't know about it, they're completely aloof, they have no clue what is going on. They don't really talk about discrimination. They don't talk about um, they don't talk about gender equality. They don't talk about this. But then when you meet them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Yushine, like I heard your podcast. I heard you guest post. I really want to know what you have to say." And I kid you not, this past like month and a half, it has been nothing but white males talking to me. They're like, what, how can I do something? And we realized, I was like, you know what the problem is? None of you guys are putting this like gender equality on your website. None of you guys are talking about how you want diversity in your website. You don't have a picture of anybody black on your website.
Mhm.
Like you
Mhm.
don't have
And if you
anybody
do, it's just
Latina.
one guy.
Exactly. And I was like, these, when you look at the top people that are like really doing well um, financially in the like personal finance area, they have pictures of everyone and they say what they feel, and they're a lot more open. Now, can you imagine what that would look like if someone who is certified and knows money and has like more of a legality and can actually help you more instead of just always DIY, what that would look like if somebody white saying like, I'm behind, like here's my allyship, that's going to change. That'll change your personal brand. That'll change your firm's personal brand. Like I don't
Of
understand why
course.
people don't. That bothers me so much. I'm like, just say how you feel. And I think Kayla is doing a good job with that on um, her Instagram. I am very
Mhm.
excited to see what that's going to look like with the well and other places. Um, because I mean, at the end of the day, Instagram is mostly pictures. So I'm excited to see and good. And, you know, good. What's the dealio?
So I the dealio is that I finished the manuscript
Okay.
yesterday,
Congrats.
and it's gonna go out to the editors in the next week or two. And then once that process, it'll have a couple round of edits, and once that process is finished, it'll be available on Amazon.
Awesome. I can't wait. That'll be good because
Yeah.
what is your intent? Is your intention to have it out in May, maybe?
Yeah, my intention is to have it out basically as soon as possible.
Okay.
I was really aiming for April, like before the end of this like before the beginning of Q2, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to happen more in Q2.
Okay.
Um and I mean, just to kind of give people an idea of what the book is about. The book is just basically um success math, which is called Success Math, a millennial's qualitative approach. And what it does is it
Mm,
takes a quantitative equation, and it uses that to help look at qualitative variables that we consider when we're working towards the success we truly desire. And the first part of the book really just helps to unpack the idea of, you know, the foundation of the formula, which is the S. What is the success that you truly desire? Why is it that you care about that? And what does that look like? And then it breaks down the other variables. So it's about the alignment of your, so A squared, alignment of your beliefs, behaviors, and values. M over E, your mental and emotional support. Where's your, do you have a mentor? Like, what do you have, a champion? Where's your tribe? Like, what are you doing around that? That's of course over your execution. Like, what is your level of execution? Are you executing? And then all of that is sort of against the action, your initial and your follow-up action. And then it kind of like, the goal of the book isn't to be like this treatise, that's like 1,000 pages, but really to be something short and digestible that gives someone, like, I was just thinking, what if there's a kid in the projects in Brownsville, because that's where I grew up, right now, who's like has entrepreneurial spirit and like is super smart, but doesn't have access to anyone at all to kind of give them this knowledge. What would I want to tell them? Right? Or what would I want to say to them? And so that's what this book is doing. I mean, it's for anyone, um, especially if you're someone who's like in transition, who's realizing that you've been pursuing someone else's idea of success, or if you know you want to, but you don't really have a process in how to like get the ball rolling to get there, to set yourself up for a foundation. This book is for those people.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out and uncovering some of the unlimiting beliefs. Could you tell the audience where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, so I mean, you can find me at awildarivera.com. But you can also find me on Instagram at miss.awildarivera. I'm on Facebook as well, Awilda Rivera Coach, Yogi, Spiritual Advisor, and on LinkedIn, Awilda N. Rivera. But really the best place is the website. If you go to www.awildarivera.com, you'll find like all of my things, everything I've ever written on yoga, other podcast appearances, a link to my podcast, When Life Was Awilda Rivera, um, information about the trips. The next one coming up is October 1st to the 9th to Spain and Morocco. And I'm collaborating with a gentleman who on Instagram goes by Yoga Playground.
Okay.
Um, he goes by, I mean, his name, they call him Easy, but his name is Evan Hall. Great guy, another guy of color. So we'll be both two people of color facilitating the trip. Um, and what else is on there? Oh, information about the coaching. So if you listen and you're like, hey, I'm curious about success coaching or how that could help me, you can get information about there. There's some case studies, and there's even a link to schedule a complimentary consultation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes. I really appreciate
Great.
it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.